Stories of success, stories of failure, stories of strength, stories of corruption, stories of hope, stories of despair, stories of optimism, resilience, achievement, triumph. Remarkable stories from different places around the world. Join us for a series of stunning award-winning documentaries. Why Stories on BBC News.
Hello, I'm Christian Fraser. This is The Context, and this was a day of high-level diplomacy.
It is important for us that Poland will be one of the main partners in the reconstruction of Ukraine.
China has proposed a peace plan, and we have welcomed it. But do we agree with it in its entirety? No.
Russia is open to constructive partnerships with all countries. We are not going to isolate ourselves from anyone.
Hello, welcome to the programme. We've got a packed 2 hours for you this evening, including a special investigation tonight into the execution of an unarmed Ukrainian soldier. We'll tell you who he was, who was involved, and we'll get the thoughts of a former judge who sat on the panel of the International Criminal Court. Big developments in Scotland today, where police have arrested Peter Morrell, Nicola Sturgeon's husband, in connection to the SNP's fundraising and finances. But we'll start tonight with the split-screen events we've been watching throughout the day. President Zelensky in Warsaw, Emmanuel Macron in Beijing. It's his first visit to China in 4 years. And from a Chinese perspective, Emmanuel Macron is probably the most important politician in Europe right now. It is the French president in particular who's continued to engage with Vladimir Putin to find a diplomatic solution to this war in Ukraine. And they see him as the man who can push the European Union towards a more moderate position on China than the one the United States is taking. And in Los Angeles, right now, the Taiwanese president Tsai Ing-wen is meeting with the US House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Note, in LA and not in Washington, D.C. Let's have a quick listen in.
And of course, President Tsai is a great champion of that bond. Taiwan is a successful democracy, a thriving economy, and a global leader in health and science. And whether it's our deep commercial ties, strong people-to-people relationships, or shared values.
The Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen in LA meeting the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Great panel with us tonight to discuss all that has happened today. The Pulitzer Prize-winning historian, journalist and author Anne Applebaum, whose book Red Famine, Stalin's War on Ukraine is an essential read for anyone looking for context on what is going on. Also with us, Isabel Hilton, founder and senior advisor for China Dialogue, and Sophie Pedder, the Paris editor for The Economist. Thank you all for your patience for being with us. Isabel, let me just take in what's just happened there in LA. The White House has just this minute put out a statement saying there is no reason for Beijing to turn this transit into something that is used as a pretext to overreact. Of course, they're thinking back to what happened when Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan. How will Beijing react? Really interesting. Isabel Hilton, Anne Applebaum and Sophie Pedder, thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take a quick look at some of the other stories making headlines today here in the UK. The Home Office has confirmed it has leased a barge to house asylum seekers in Dorset. The UK government says it's costing more than £6 million a day to house migrants in hotels, and this barge is a significantly cheaper solution. Around 500 migrants will be accommodated on the vessel in Portland in the south of England. The husband of the former Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has been arrested in an investigation into the SNP's finances and fundraising. Peter Morrell was the SNP's chief executive from 1999 until his resignation just last month. Police Scotland said officers are carrying out searches at several properties as part of their investigation. The new First Minister of Scotland, Humza Yousaf, said it was a difficult day for his party. Let's stick with that story. Andrew Kerr is joining us from Glasgow. I understand, Andrew, that the police had 8 hours to either charge or release Mr Morel. What's happened? Andrew Kerr in Glasgow, thank you very much indeed. Police forces around the world have taken part in a major operation to dismantle one of the biggest online criminal marketplaces. Genesis Market is thought to have sold personal information that was stolen from more than 2 million people to fraudsters, enabling them to impersonate the victims without raising suspicion. Browser details, IP addresses, physical locations, all of it on sale for less than $1, allowing criminals to access bank and shopping accounts. The raids took place in 17 countries, led by the FBI and the Dutch police. Well, Daniel is with me here in the studio. This is a significant piece of international police work. What else could you buy on this website?
Then you really need to get in there and change all your passwords.
Yeah, it's a warning to people. They need to keep changing their passwords and look after their personal information. Daniel Sanford, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Extraordinary investigation across 17 countries around the world today. Do stay with us. We're going to go for a short break, but when we come back, we're going to show you our investigation into a war crime committed in Ukraine, the execution of an unarmed, unknown soldier. We'll tell you who he was, where he was, and we'll tell you who we think might be responsible. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is The Context. The United States says it supports the call for a special tribunal to investigate crimes of aggression in Ukraine. Tonight, our investigation into the execution of an unarmed Ukrainian soldier. A war crime captured on tape. Just one case among thousands that are still to be prosecuted. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February last year, over 70,000 possible war crimes have been committed by the Russian armed forces. The sheer volume of the work facing prosecutors is so big, it could take them decades to bring the perpetrators to court. There are thousands of videos of alleged atrocities circulating on social media. One such film appeared in the first week of March. This is the video, widely seen on Twitter. The man in the picture, an unarmed Ukrainian soldier. It's a video of an execution. With the help of Ukrainian producer Olga Malcheska, we have been investigating that video and the open source material that goes around it to make sense of what happened. It took several weeks, which reveals to us just how time-consuming one of these investigations will be. And a warning, some of this report is distressing from the start. Well, with us tonight in the studio is our Ukrainian producer, Olga Malcheska, who's done so much work on this investigation. And from LA, we're honoured to have with us Judge Chile Eboasuji, who was formerly president of the International Criminal Court. Judge, it's very good to have you with us. Let me start with you, Olga, if I may, because I've watched over the last 3 weeks how much work you've put into this, and we'll come back to that in a second. But I know that Alexander was only one of the men on that front line on that particular day, and you want to talk about the other 2 men who you've now identified. Which they've been talking about in Warsaw today. Crucially important. Let's bring in Judge Eboasuji and tap some of the expertise. I don't know, Judge, if you've seen the video, but maybe you could inform us what the law is for prisoners of war, an unarmed prisoner of war. What does the Geneva Convention say, and what's your view of this particular case? Judge Eboasuji, thank you very much for that. Olga, let me give you the last word. We've just got a minute left. The family of Alexander, does this give them some peace?
Well, it's difficult to speak about peace, when your loved one was killed and when his mother found out about how it was done from the social media, as you absolutely correctly mentioned in our report. But at least it gives them hope that the justice can be restored, at least in that part where it is possible to restore it.
And because it's such a celebrated case, you would imagine that the prosecutor stays with it?
Yes.
Yeah.
At least they hope so.
Olga, thank you very much, and thank you for all the work that you put into that. We're going to go to a short break. We'll be back, of course, for our second hour. Our panel will be with us very shortly. We're going to focus on events at Mar-a-Lago last night, and also we're going to take another look at some of the diplomacy that there's been around the world today. Some important events going on. Do stay with us. Hello, I'm Christian Fraser, and this is The Context.
I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it.
You know what this is? This is tyranny. Now, Donald Trump is a historic figure. You think if he was Mitt Romney, they'd give a damn? No.
He didn't look very happy, and I think that he's frustrated with how this is going. And he does, I think, see that while there could be an upside, bad things are usually bad.
Welcome back. Donald Trump was warned at his court appearance on Tuesday not to pass comment that could jeopardize the rule of law or incite violence and civil unrest. Well, several hours later, in a grievance-filled speech at his Mar-a-Lago resort, the former president was lashing out at the Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating wife and family, while describing the special prosecutor investigating his role in the January 6 riots as a lunatic. The indictment, which was unsealed Tuesday, accused Trump of masterminding an expansive conspiracy to suppress damaging stories that might have threatened his 2016 campaign, and that included arranging a $130,000 payment to the adult film star Stormy Daniels. However, the 16-page indictment was far narrower in scope than some had expected, which prompted this front page from the New York Post. Joining us over the next hour, the Conservative and former Education Secretary Justine Greening, and also with us, Miles Taylor, former Chief of Staff at Homeland Security in the Trump administration. Miles, let me start with you if I could, and we'll turn it to events last night at Mar-a-Lago. The judge opted not to impose a gag order. Let's have a listen to what Donald Trump said about the judge. And there speaks a man who was in Homeland Security in the Trump administration. Let's bring in Joe Moreno, the former federal prosecutor. Lovely to see you, Joe. Look, the New York Post asked this morning, is that it? Are they right? Is the indictment as weak as Donald Trump's supporters would have us believe? Sounds right. We might need your expertise a little further going forward, Joe. Thank you very much for being on the programme. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Chris.
I just want to bring you some of that breaking news that we had in the last hour. The former SNP chief executive Peter Morell has been released without charge pending further investigation into SNP finances. Peter Morell, of course, the husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. He was arrested on Wednesday morning. Our Scotland correspondent Andrew Kerr sent us this update just a short time ago. Andrew Kerr reporting. Let's take a quick look at some of the other stories making headlines. The Home Office has confirmed it's leased a barge to house asylum seekers in Dorset. The UK government says it costs more than £6 million per day to house migrants in hotels, and says the barge is significantly cheaper as a solution. Around 500 migrants will be accommodated on this vessel in Portland in the south of England. 21 people have been found guilty of involvement in the biggest child sex abuse case ever investigated by the West Midlands Police here in England. 7 children were abused over almost a decade in Walsall and Wolverhampton. The oldest child was 12. Justine, on that story, extraordinary story in the West Midlands here today, just recently the Home Secretary Suella Braverman said almost all, her words, Almost all members of grooming gangs in the UK are British Pakistani men who held attitudes incompatible with British values. Well, clearly it's not exclusively Pakistani men, because the 21 people on this rap sheet are all white, which tells us that we have to remain open-minded about who commits these offences. Yeah, the Chief Constable of West Midlands Police said there is no social or religious boundaries to this sort of abuse. I can tell you it turns up in every part of society. You're watching BBC News.
Wendy and Ian have been married for 36 years and they've got 3 children and 2 grandchildren. But everything changed in 2014 when Ian was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia at just 50 years old.
2013, he was behaving in a bit strange ways. We didn't think he was ill, we just thought that there was something wrong. I actually thought my marriage was breaking down because he seemed to ruin everything that we were trying to do.
Frontotemporal dementia mainly affects people between the ages of 45 and 65. Symptoms can include personality and behaviour changes and problems with language and mental focus. Wendy is pleased that there's already more awareness surrounding frontotemporal dementia since the actor Bruce Willis has been diagnosed with it.
If there's celebrities out there that can promote this, it's fantastic.
There is still no cure or even a way of slowing the disease down, but Wendy hopes that more awareness will help those living with it and their families.
You're watching BBC News. Let's go back to one of the stories I mentioned a little earlier. More than 500 men who arrived here in the UK to seek asylum are to be housed on a boat in Dorset. The Home Office says the 93-metre long barge, which looks like a block of flats, doesn't it, is known as the Bibby Stockholm. It'll be moored in Portland to save the government money that they're currently spending on hotel rooms for migrants. Let me show you the inside. It has been refurbished since it was criticised recently as an oppressive environment. It's been used by the Dutch government to house asylum seekers. In fact, all sorts of governments have used it in the past. It has ensuite rooms, it has TV and games rooms and a gym. But the plans have already met opposition from the local Conservative MP, Richard Drax, who reported to have threatened a legal challenge, saying the barge is being dumped on our door without consultation. And this is precisely the point, Justine. The Conservatives, because there are local elections just around the corner, want to look tough on crime and on immigration, illegal immigration. But people don't want barges, they don't want to house illegal migrants on their doorstep.
Happen has to go beyond these individual governments. There has to be more regular engagement between Western governments to handle this. Of course, states have an obligation to protect their borders, but look, these are people who really want to come be productive, patriotic citizens, whether it's in the UK or the US, and legal immigration coming in the front door needs to be reformed and addressed so we don't end up with these massive backlogs in unsatisfactory conditions.
Hello, I'm Christian Fraser. This is The Context. It's a day of high-level diplomacy. President Macron has been in Beijing, where he says China plays a key role in bringing peace to Ukraine, while President Zelensky has been meeting with his Polish counterpart. More on all those stories coming up, but first, time for a bit of sport. Here's Gavin.
Yes, thanks very much indeed, Christian. Hello there. Lots of football happening at the moment to bring you up to date with the El Clasico showdown between Barcelona and Real Madrid coming up. But in the Premier League, Manchester United are hoping to end their 3-game winless run. They're currently 1-0 ahead against Brentford at the moment into the second half in that match. Tiger Woods there. And just a reminder, in the Premier League, it's currently Newcastle 3-1 up against West Ham in that match there. And Manchester United are a goal up against Brentford. Around 20 minutes or so to go in those games. Keep up to date with all those on the BBC Sport website. That's all from us, though, for now. Christian, we'll see you soon.
Gavin, thank you very much. I think we're all Tiger Wood. We're all pushing it and not coming up to the mark. If you were looking for the conflicting approach to the West's approach to China, then you need look no further than the two meetings that took place today, thousands of miles apart. In LA, the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy was meeting Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen, and in Beijing, the French President Emmanuel Macron was beginning a three-day tour as a guest of Xi Jinping. On one hand, a hardening of attitudes towards an increasingly assertive China, and on the other, recognition, pragmatism, whatever you want to call it, of the need to engage with China, no matter the political backdrop. Earlier in the programme, we discussed all this with the Pulitzer Prize-winning author Anne Applebaum, Sophie Pedder of The Economist, and the China expert Isabel Hilton. Justine Greening and Miles Taylor are still with us here on The Context. Miles, Emmanuel Macron thinks it is Beijing that has the ability to curb Vladimir Putin's instincts. I don't sense that the White House has that confidence. OK, we'll have to leave that there. Around the world, across the UK, this is BBC News.
I think we can use a form of capitalism and continue to get its benefits while solving climate change.
We should remember that the globalization we had before brought more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
I always associated fashion with fun and joy.
Women ourselves are finding our power. We always had a voice. We just weren't allowed to use it.
When big names talk, they talk to the BBC.
It is time for the panel, that part of the programme where our panellists choose the stories they want to talk about. We'll start with you, Justine, ladies first. 4 out of 5 employers are still paying women less than men. Lots of employers not putting women first. We're out of time. Thank you both. Justine Greening, Miles Taylor, lovely to have you with us. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Say goodbye to our world viewers, but UK viewers are still with us. We're going to talk about an extraordinary story today, because one of the world's biggest online criminal marketplaces has been taken down in a global sting operation. Genesis Market sold stolen login details that allow fraudsters to access bank and shopping accounts. Around 120 people were arrested across the globe. Here in the UK, 24 people arrested. Daniel Samford has this report. Let's take a quick look at what's coming up here on BBC News later this evening. It's News Night, coming up at 11:30, but Hugh Edwards has the 10 o'clock news.
Yes, we're getting ready here for tonight's BBC News at 10. We'll be focusing on events today in Scotland. The former chief executive of the Scottish National Party, Peter Murrell, who is the husband of the former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, was arrested today by police looking at party funding. We'll have a look at that story. Also in Dorset, where the government wants to house 500 migrants on a barge off the coast of that county. That's causing a lot of local opposition. And we'll take a look at events in Augusta in Georgia, where some of the world's best golfers are preparing to tee off in the Masters. All of that at 10.
At 10:30 tonight on Newsnight, high political drama in Scotland as the husband of Nicola Sturgeon, the former First Minister, is arrested over allegations, all denied, of financial impropriety. Peter Murrell, the former chief executive of the SNP, was released tonight without charge. Where does all this leave the SNP and the campaign for independence? We'll be joined here in Glasgow by Sir John Curtis, the leading psephologist, political journalist Hannah Roger, and by one of the Yes campaign's most prominent activists, Amar Anwar. Join us then.
Kirsty, thank you very much for that. That is all from us here on The Context. We'll be back with you same time tomorrow. Thanks very much for watching. Good night.
Hello there. Not quite as much sunshine around today. For many, it's been quite a cloudy day.